Today we're going to go through the steps on how to draw a nose in Photoshop. It's very similar to the steps we used when we drew the eye earlier. One thing you want to have available is your navigator, which lives under Window. Everything's in alphabetical order. You also want to pay attention to your layers because you'll be adding a lot of layers. So I have my nose photo. I'm going to start by adding a layer above it. I'm going to double click on layer 1 and call it outline. I am going to use the eyedropper to pick up the darkest value I see on this nose, and I'm going to use that color to trace my outline. With noses, they never look quite realistic until you get all of the shading and the shadows in the correct locations. So right now I am tracing all the main parts I see, but I also see like the button of the nose. I see a shadow here. And then I've got some great highlights and things, and I'm not going to outline them, I'm just going to color them when it gets to that point. But right now I have a pretty nice outline of my nose. With the outline done, it is time to add a layer between my photo and my outline. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to call this one shading. So I'm going to go back to my eyedropper and I'm going to pick up all of the little values that I see and try to paint them on where I see them. And as we've discussed in the previous tutorial, the more colors you add, the more realistic this is going to look. So I'm just picking up all the colors I can and painting along the way. To save time in the tutorial, I went ahead and paused the recording while I painted in the rest of my nose. Now you can see there's a whole lot of empty spaces here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer in between my photo of my nose and my shading of my nose, and I'm going to pick up the main nose color with my eyedropper, and then I'm going to take a big fat brush, okay, maybe not quite that fat, and I'm going to fill in all of the empty spaces. So the nose has a general skin color behind all of those values, and this is letting me help that along without having to go back in and grab all of the other values. Now I'm going to call this solid. That's my solid layer. Now I can go to my shading layer and use the smudge tool to blend in those values I laid down initially. And remember, you can change all of your options from your smudge tool from the top toolbar. You can change the size of the brush, the type of brush, the strength, and then you can come in and start to wiggle your mouse left and right, top to bottom. I click and let go a lot to encourage it to move and shade for me. And you can see the colors starting to blend better. And they look smoother because I have that solid outline behind it. So right now, I don't see the photo. I don't know what my nose is supposed to look like. So what I can do is I can click on my nose layer, move it to the side, and now I can go back to smudging my shading layer, and I know exactly what it's supposed to look like. Like right here where I'm smudging, it's too bright of an area. I'm going to need to go back in and either dodge and burn or probably paint some additional values because it doesn't quite match up in my opinion. The hardest part, I think, of shading in Photoshop is learning how to smudge and how to dodge and burn believably. And it really does come down to the brush type and the strength, and then just kind of getting in that rhythm you need to blur things together. Now, I'm going to hide my outline. Now I can see that I've got some rougher edges that I need to smooth out. I can also see that this darkness starts to fade over here, so I can click and drag and start to fade some of that value over there. Now I haven't dodged and burned yet. I haven't gone back in and added any more paint. This is purely just smudging those colors around. After I feel like I've smudged all I can, then I will go to the dodge and burn tool. Remember, the fist shape, the burn, makes things darker. From the top toolbar, you want to pick the range that matches what value you're working on. So I'm going to start with midtones because I'm not really sure. And I'm going to try to add this darkness that I see over here. Now that looks a little gray to me. I'm going to flip it to shadows and see what that looks like. It's a little bit better. And then up here it's a little bit darker. Here it's a little darker. So I can just go in and add some subtle values. Same thing with the dodge tool. You want to make sure that you're on the correct range. I'm going to guess midtones. Yep, midtones is a winner. And I can go in and add some additional values with just the dodge and burn tool. Once I've added all of these elements, then I'm going to go back in and smudge a little bit more. I may use my eyedropper to paint a little bit more. And then I'm going to return to my outline. There's a reason why I made the outline in the same color as the darkest shadow in the nose, because I'm going to use the outline to help define the nose. That's the hardest thing when you're drawing a nose, is to get all of the shadows in the right spot so that it really looks like that nose is standing out three-dimensionally on the face. So I've got some pretty good values going on here. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. But when I put that outline on there, it really adds a lot to the visual. So what I'm going to do is unhide my outline layer, click on the outline layer. I'm going to make my brush a smidge smaller. And I'm going to come in and smudge that outline. So I'm just doing a little wiggle left and right, just to make the outline fade more. And now that value is part of the design of my nose. So I don't really need the line here, but I think it's going to help to see it right here. Really make that button nose appear. And right here you can see a crease in the photo. So I'm going to wiggle that one a little bit and keep that line there. Now for the outside lines, you don't really realize how much you need them until you have the skin tone of the face behind it. And then you realize, oh, okay, that outline is what's going to make my face appear 3D. So I need to keep it. So I'm trying to soften it. I'm not trying to get rid of those lines at all. Just lightening the edges a little bit. So again, wiggling my brush back and forth softens that edge. I could also take an eraser to this layer and lighten some of these lines. So if I go to my eraser tool, I can get a soft one. I need it to be smaller. And then I can drop the opacity so that if I click and drag on this, see, it's making it lighter, but it's not getting rid of it entirely. And maybe that line's a little too dark. So I can go in and edit some pieces that I think are too extreme. Now my nose is starting to look much closer to this. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to highlight, sorry, the school bell rang. I'm going to highlight these 3 layers and on my keyboard go Control E, like elephant, and that is going to merge these together. Now, these are all one layer, so now it's easier to come in and smudge the colors where I need them, add in dodging and burning, because now that background layer that I had that was just the skin tone, now I can blend that in with the other values that I had sitting on top of my nose. It'll make it easier to dodge and burn too. So that's the basics of making your own nose. It's all the same tools we used when we made our eye, but now we're using them to make, oops, wrong tool, shouldn't be burning, should be dodging. But now we're using those same concepts to make a nose look 3D. And once you put this on the finished face, then it'll really start to come together. All right, that's it. Good luck making your own nose.